We'd like to welcome all of you to our podcast today. I have John Preston, who happens to be my partner. We've been partners for about 3 years. And we were raised in different generations. There's 20 years difference. Obviously, I'm the senior one in the relationship. But I want John to talk a little bit about his generation, what it was like to come out as gay, and compare it to the struggles and the fear that he had to have, or he had to endure, and gets courage to get courageous to get beyond that fear. So, John, I'm going to leave it up to you. Tell me a little bit about your background and where you were raised.
I was born in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1968, so that makes me 54 now. I have 3 siblings, an older sister, she's 9 years older, a brother that's 7 years older, and one sister that's 2 years younger. There's the gap between my brother and myself because my mom had a couple miscarriages, and so there's a 7-year gap between kids. So it's kind of like 2 separate families in a lot of ways. Mom and dad, pretty traditional family. My dad worked. My mom was at home quite a bit. She would dabble in some things like real estate and some different things like that. But dad was home from work every night. So a kind of a little bit of a, I don't know what you want to say, like a TV family where just the mom, the dad, the 4 kids, and the dog and the cat, and
Kind of
the
like
Midwest.
Kind of like Leave It to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver with twice the kids. Pretty ordinary, run-of-the-mill American family in the Midwest in Michigan in the 70s. So that's how I grew up. Pretty stable, solid environment to be a kid.
So, John, how did you know that you were different and that you knew that you were gay? How old were you when you felt that you were different? And what did you do when you felt you were attracted to men, to boys?
So I would say that up through elementary school, I didn't have any sense. I was just pretty much a regular kid running around climbing trees, riding bikes, playing tag, whatever. But right around puberty, I started noticing that the way that all my friends were talking about girls were the ways that I was feeling about men. And I really never was really attracted to my friends, but like their dads.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would notice that I was drawn physically to men right around 7th, 8th grade. But I buried it because it was bad to be gay at the time. There's fear of being teased, beat up. And so you just keep it in and you just pretend not to be gay, and you lie and deceive to appear to be straight. And that's just what I did through junior high and high school. It's difficult it was difficult for teenagers. It appears to be considerably less difficult here in 2023. But in the early 80s, it was quite difficult. And one of the things that I reflect back on is I remember being so afraid that if my family found out, that they would disown me at 13, 14 years of age. And I knew I wasn't equipped to go out in the world and take care of myself. So there's that fear of abandonment. And so that just kept me in the closet until later in life. And we'll get to that in a little bit later. But that was what my teenage years were like. That's what growing up was like. Really, the good thing was it was a solid family environment. So I had that going for me.
And one of the things that John has shared with me is that he used sports. He's very athletic. He would use sports and enjoyed sports. And was that, John, a way of burying yourself? Or if you just were more sportsman, you're more of a man, more rugged, then people wouldn't get any inclination that you may have an interest in men. Would that be true for you?
I wouldn't say that I intentionally played sports to avoid being considered gay in school, but I was naturally good at sports, and therefore it was easy to keep the conversation about the sports and not about dating, and not it was a shield, but it wasn't the draw. I mean, I enjoyed playing the sports, and I enjoyed being active, and I enjoyed, all of that. So it wasn't like I was doing something I disliked to intentionally hide, but it was an acceptable thing to be interested in. That would the side effect of that would be that the athletes aren't gay. So it was a safe, easy place to hang out. But I like doing it. Yeah.
I get that. Now, John, I know that you left Michigan when you graduated from high school. Tell us a little bit about why you left Michigan, where you ended up with, and what type of a career at that time you followed.
So what I did, I had a really good opportunity, and part of it has to do with my brother being 7 years older. He had already moved out to the LA area, and he was working in the film business, doing lighting and grip work. And he had work for me, and I always knew I was going to leave Michigan. I didn't want to stay there. It's hard to figure out exactly why I always felt that way, but a lot of it was if I saw things on TV and I realized like there's a huge world out there, and I found that most of my circle of friends didn't have any drive to accomplish or do anything more. They were just settled into this small town in the Midwest, and that was just their lot in life and what they're going to do. And I always wanted out. I always wanted more. So that was part of it. I do think being gay made me want to go to a bigger city because, traditionally large urban areas are more of a safe haven for gay people. Obviously LA is a lot safer than small town Michigan. So I do think that was there as well. But so he got me work at a year out of high school. I was 19, doing lighting in LA, which was great because I was out of Michigan. I was in Los Angeles. I was 19. I had a good job, and so that all was really, really a good time in my life.
Now I know, John, that you stayed in the movie business in lighting for about 9 years. Is that
7
correct?
years.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
7 years. And you made good money, but you said you found that, well, you explain it to me, that it was wearing you out, wearing you down. Tell us about what that means.
Well, the film business is rough. So the fact that my brother and his wife did it for 30 plus years, I have a lot of respect for that. For me personally, I quickly realized that, I wouldn't say quickly. For me, what I realized was that I was working super long days. I was working 12-hour days would be as short as days you would ever work. So I was working 14 to 20-hour days, not getting enough sleep, eating crappy food off of a catering truck, not really taking care of myself, even though it was a physically active job. It more tore you down than it built you up. And when I would work on a movie, I'd have a super bad outlook on life. Borderline depressed, but more just a negative outlook on life. Nothing like chronically depressed, but just kind of angry and unhappy. And then the show would end, and I would have weeks off before I'd get another show. And I would go to the gym and work out. I'd go to the beach. I'd surf. I'd go to the grocery store, cook my own food. I didn't have an alarm clock, so I was getting as much sleep as I needed. And I thought life was great. And it took me 5 years because I was a little slow to figure out the combination of what makes me happy and what makes me not happy. And it just hit me. It's like, I want to share this with the world, that eating right, getting enough rest, getting good structured exercise makes you feel very happy. And when you don't get those three things, you're very miserable. So one day I was at the gym and I'm working out and I look across and there's like a trainer working with a client. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. They're sharing exactly the things that I want to share with the world. So I did spend 2 more years in the film business and put some money away so that I could go back to college. So I went back to college at 25 to get a degree in kinesiology and become a personal trainer. Only to find out my first semester in college, you don't need a degree to be a personal trainer. So I took a personal training certification and started personal training my way through college. So I started that in 93.
So your degree was in kinesiology, your undergraduate degree from Long Beach State?
Yeah, Long Beach State.
Okay.
Yeah, so I stayed in Southern California, went to school there. Kinesiology with an option in athletic training from Long Beach State.
Very good. And since that period of time, and since you left the business and started becoming personal trainer, you have been in the personal training business now for what, 30 years?
This will be 30 years this fall,
30 years this fall. Well, thank you for sharing that, John. Here's a question I'd like to discuss, the both of us. The difference between coming out in my generation and you coming out in your generation. Like I said, you're 20 years, 20 years younger than me. I can just say for me, when I was raised in a society where coming out in many cases would have been definitely emotional suicide and even physical suicide because it was considered to be so wrong in the 50s and 60s. It was considered even by the, the American Psychiatric Institution to be a mental illness. So there's no way anyone in my generation is ever going to come out and admit to that. The shame of being gay ruled my life. I hated the fact that I was a gay man. And so this generation that you came out is more acceptable, but you still had struggles as well. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and so that's where there's some commonality in that I didn't come out when I knew I was gay. I had shame around being gay. I wanted to hide being gay. And I stayed in the closet until I was 26. And I stayed in the closet even longer professionally. Actually, I don't have a actual date when I would say that I came out at work. It was more of I came out to some clients, but I didn't come out to others based on what I knew about them. But I stayed in the closet until I was 26.
John, let me ask you a question about that. Why did you stay in the closet? What was the fear you were having at the time where you couldn't come out?
Well, it's shame because you're taught your entire life that there's something wrong with being gay. So then you feel flawed. You feel like there's something wrong with you. You feel shame around it. There's fear of rejection. Will my friends reject me? Will my family reject me? So there's a lot of, despite our 20 years age difference, there's some real common themes. Where there's some differences is 20 years later, I never felt any pressure whatsoever to be with a woman or marry a woman so that those around me would think that I wasn't gay. I didn't feel that same pressure. Now, partially that might be generational. Partly it might have to do with the fact that my family did not have structured religion as part of it. So I didn't feel that pressure that can come from religion to live a certain way or to be molded to believe a certain thing. So those differences could be generational. They could be just our different family environments. But I definitely stayed in the closet until I was 26. That's when I came out to my family. Actually, I may have come out a little before that to my brother and his wife, but not long before 26. Because part of the thing is I lived with my brother and sister-in-law for the first 3 years that I was in California, and so I was around them a lot. Not all the time because we'd be in different movies and you literally could go weeks without seeing each other. But I was around them a lot. But I knew I had a really safe place there because they're best friends to this day. I believe my brother is a gay couple. Their best friends to this day are a gay couple that my brother met one of them, James, at his first job in LA in 81. So they've been friends since 1981. And they were friends of mine as well. So I knew my brother and sister-in-law were fine with having gay friends because their best friends are gay. So I knew that I had a safe place to land in coming out to my sister-in-law and then my brother.
So my question there, because this website or podcast rather that we're doing is a Courage to Be Courageous. So the fear that you had of coming out, and you come out at 26, how were you able to not hide in the fear, but walk through the fear and get the courage to be courageous to come out? And I believe you came out with your sister-in-law, Cindy, first.
Yeah, I told Cindy first, and I told her first before my brother, is because she just was more outwardly expressive about being supportive of gay rights. I knew my brother's best friends were a gay couple, but he didn't go out of his way to have conversations about the rights of gay people, where Cindy was more outspoken.
So what gave you the courage? What gave you the courage to say, I've been living in this secret with myself. I know authentically that I'm a gay person. I'm a gay man. What gave you the courage to do that?
I was getting frustrated with life because I was hiding out in the closet, and I didn't have any circle of gay friends. Wasn't dating anyone. I'm getting to be 26 years old. And just the pressure of deceiving people was just too much that it wasn't worth it anymore. So that's what drove me to have the confidence and the confidence and the courage to come out to my family. I just was, the lying just was too exhausting after 26 years.
I understand.
And you also reach a point where, in my case, I didn't lose my family. In your case, you did. But before you come out, you're already prepared for worst case scenario. You're already psychologically prepared that any rejection that comes my way, I can handle. And it just takes a while to get there. I probably got there faster than you because of the generational differences. And so I came out to my brother and sister-in-law. They, to my knowledge, did not share that with anyone in the family. And shortly thereafter, I was moving with a boyfriend, and I had to call my mom and dad and give them a new address and contact information, and I just wasn't going to lie. So I was just going to tell them why I was moving and who I was moving in with. And that conversation went well. Both my sisters accepted it completely from the very beginning. My dad did as well, although I had to ask him a while later because he accepted it and how he behaved, but he never really had much of a conversation around it. And my mom pretended like it was great, but I later found out from my brothers and sisters that she was having some difficulty with it. But it wasn't so much that she had an issue with gay people. She was concerned what her friends and neighbors would think about her having a gay son, like she had failed in some way. So she had some negative feelings about gay people, or she wouldn't feel that way worrying about her friends or family, but it was her issue and it wasn't my issue. But I do fully believe that in those 25 plus years, that she's fully embraced me for who I am. That was just her initial reaction early on.
And I can really comment from my perspective. I've met John's parents and spent time with them. They're wonderful, beautiful people, and I believe they accept me as John's partner. They've come a long way. And in fact, I talked to his parents, and we'd like to have them in one of our podcasts come up and be able to tell what it's like as a parent to find out their son is gay and how they dealt with it and where they're at today with it. So I'm really proud of how far John has come in being able to embrace who he is, the courage to be courageous. We all have courage, but we all have fear. So you've got to walk through the fear and become courageous. Now, one of the things that John and I talked about, because I was very religious, was a religious addict. John is not religious. And there's a certain thing, we're going to talk about religion, which is different than spirituality. It's like one gentleman the other day told me he had to leave organized church to find God. That was such a powerful statement for me. So, John, tell me a little bit about, you're not religious, and while religion, organized religion, has kept people in the closet longer, and still does keep them in the closet. And that's a sad thing to see. What do you think?
Yeah, and our relationship with religion is completely different. We don't have a similar story there at all. I remember distinctly, I don't even think I was in kindergarten. I think I was 4. And it's a Sunday morning, and we went to, my younger sister and I would go to Sunday school. I remember that. And I remember we're getting ready. I don't know what the situation was because I'm 4 or 5 years old. And my mom just threw her hands up and just said, "That's it. I get you kids ready for school Monday through Friday. I'm taking Saturday and Sunday off." And we never went to church again, which was fine with me because it meant I get to stay home on Sunday and watch football with my dad. So I didn't feel like I was missing anything. So my relationship with religion ended at age 4 or 5. And I don't really, and all it was before that was Sunday school, which I think was just playing with the other kids. So in that respect, I don't have any of the pressure that I see gay men go through who were raised with religion. There's a deeper level of guilt for those people that were raised with religion, and
I think also shame.
Yeah, it's shame and guilt.
Yes.
And the thing is because I haven't been around that part of our society, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's so important to force people to be something that they're not, because there's just this presumptive way that everyone has to live their life. And the thing that I see of it, and I see more of it now, having been part of the journey of your journey in writing the book and telling your story and hearing your story long before you even started writing the book, is I don't understand why organizations want to force everyone to live this homogenous life where everyone has the same lifestyle. Because the end result is, I've met dozens of gay men who have children and ex-wives. And so people were forced to pretend to be something they weren't, marry a woman and have kids. And so now these church-going straight women end up married to a gay man, and so they're not even in a fulfilled relationship, so it's damaging to them. Oftentimes, that chasm between the gay husband and the straight wife causes a lot of conflict in the lives of the children, and it just damages everyone. Whereas if we could just allow people to be who they are right from the beginning, then the people that have faith and the people that go to church, the straight women that go to church, they can find a straight man to marry and not have a gay man feel forced to live a life that's not authentic.
And also live a life that is secretive. Many times they're going out and having affairs with men and their wives don't know. They suffer, not only suffer emotionally and physically, but they suffer spiritually, and the children suffer as well. And one of the things that I really bring out of my book, and I think John really really made a comment that made me think about it, is honesty. Honesty. Be honest. Honest will give you the freedom to be who you are. Be honest with your mate, honest with your kids. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a journey. But when people are not honest, they keep secrets and they hide. And it affects them emotionally and spiritually, and it affects their families emotionally and spiritually. So we're going to talk about honesty in the future as well. It's sometimes hard, especially when you love someone, you love your wife, you love your kids, and because you don't want to hurt them, you go to being dishonest. Well, the dishonesty hurts them more. And we're going to talk about that in the future as well. Well, we really appreciate spending some time with John today. Oh, John, you wanted to say one more thing?
Yeah, one thing we were going to talk about is we talked about the generational change, and you had mentioned that when you were growing up as a teenager and a young adult, that the American Psychological Association had homosexuality categorized as a mental illness.
Right.
And it was a crime to be mentally ill. I mean, it was a crime to be gay, and how different your 20 years were compared to my 20 years. And in retrospect, people 20 years younger than me and 40 years younger than me, the world has changed and evolved so rapidly. But the reason why I think my process of coming out was, in comparison, easier than it was for you, because I did it at 26, you did it at 70. So obviously it was an easier process for me. Similar, but easier, is I think we have to give credit to, the gay rights movement that began in '69, which was the time you were getting married and having your first child. So your daughter was born in '69. I was 1 year old. So I don't know a world without gay people fighting for equality, whereas you do. And you also, we both grew up in relatively small towns. I think yours might have been smaller in Idaho and in Alaska than the towns I grew up in. But yeah, it's small town America. And in your case, it was before there was any gay right movement. And I think by the time I got to be 20 to 26, it was a quarter century of people fighting for the rights of gay people. And I think that made it a much more acceptable thing for me at 26 than it ever would have been for you at 26. And I think the other big contributing factor is, as horrendous as it was, the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, is all of a sudden in the 80s, families are losing their brother and their child and aunt and their uncle to AIDS. And the thing is those gay men that died in the 80s because of AIDS could have potentially stayed in the closet. But when they lose their life to AIDS, in essence, they're outed to their family. And what happened in that process is, I'm sure some of the family members would have preferred they weren't gay, but they probably would have accepted them as gay had they had the opportunity for them not to pass away prematurely. So now there's some empathy about, well, yes, I didn't know he was gay, he died of AIDS, but I would have loved him anyways. And all of those straight people that never would have known that the gay people they loved were gay found out they were gay and realized it's okay to be gay. I'd rather have them alive and gay than to die from this horrendous disease. So there was a lot of things that occurred in that 20 years from you becoming an adult to the 20 years of me becoming an adult. And I think that's why it was so much easier for me and in my generation. There still are people my age who are married to women, gay men who are married to women at my age, but I believe far fewer than in your generation. So
I totally agree.
And I think yes, the credit of that goes to the pioneers, that fought for gay rights starting back in 1969, and the unfortunate tragedy of the AIDS epidemic.
Mm-hmm. In fact, we're going to have Brian McNaught as one of our guests who fought for gay rights in the 60s, 70s, has done a powerful job in that too. Really appreciate, John, having you on my podcast today. We're going to have John in the future on our podcast as well, just give you an update on his career. He has his master's degree in exercise science and wellness from ASU, graduated at the top of his class. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, I think it's true.
Well, that's what you tell me, and that's what
Yeah.
your little ward on the wall says. So he has 13 trainers that work for him, and I think 3 or 4 concierges. He does an incredible job of training, and I think exercise, and we're going to talk about that and how when you're going through the struggles in your life and the pain in your life, why exercise and keeping yourself eating well helps you to be able to actually in some ways be more courageous. So we're going to talk about that in the near future.
Yeah, it's the psychological benefits of regular exercise can be part of the solution for somebody who's struggling
Right.
to live as their authentic life. It could be part of their toolbox to get where they need to get. And
Thank
so
you,
I'm
John.
happy to share what I know in future
appreciate that.
podcasts.
Well, this is Dan Bolen with my guest, John Preston. We thank you for joining our podcast today, and we'll look forward to having you join us again. Take care and be your authentic self.